Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Revelinsky? Yeah, you did
Yes.
walk in. Flournoy?
Yes.
Hamas?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any additions or changes to this evening's agenda? I'd like to do two things. One is we'll move the presentation by Burbach and Associates from Andy, who's here and has a long drive. We'll move that just after our budget hearing. And then also Scott Tim, who will be giving a overview of the past year's activities in the sustainability area. We'll move that up to just before the mayor's report as our last item in the action items area. And then we'll move now to the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the February 24th meeting, approval of the January finance report, a resolution for employment of the police department, and approval of liquor licenses to Top of the Rock, Burning Oak, Pizza Hut, Hy-Vee, Fairfield Golf and Country Club, Revelations, and approval of claims in the amount of $259,855.41. Any questions regarding those consent agenda items?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Move to approve. Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Second by Flournoy. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Hamas?
Yes.
Revelinsky?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then moving to our public appearances, first on the agenda is Lila Williams. I don't see Lila here. Lila in the audience? Okay. So if she does come a little bit later, we'll work that in. Also, the Pool and Recreation Center Task Force was scheduled for an appearance tonight after a noon meeting this morning and a special meeting that we are setting up for Wednesday at 6:30 here at City Hall. We're going to table that discussion until that time, so we won't be receiving a presentation this evening from Task Force. So we'll move then to our next area of resolutions, action items, and ordinances. The first will be the approval of the FY 14-15 budget. So I'll ask John Revelinsky to give an overview, and then Kevin as well, please, just in terms of our budget activities over the last several months, and then we'll open up public hearing.
I will rely on Kevin to talk about the ins and outs of this budget. It's a very complex animal. We do have an increase in taxes, and I don't think that's a surprise. We've been discussing our budget for some time. Mainly, the tax increase comes from the increased spending on the bonds for the new pool and rec center, which were approved by a vote a while back, as well as the, what do you call it? The
Capital.
SURF.
I was looking for the SURF capital improvement bonds, which will go to mainly renovate our aging sewer system. These two things account for basically the entire increase in our budget. And I'm going to let Kevin give the figures, of the actual amounts. Other than that, I feel that the departments have done a good job coming together and really looking at their needs, looking at in order to serve the community. We have some very dedicated public servants who put a lot of attention and effort into this budget, into their daily work, and so I am behind this budget, and I think the committee felt good about it, even though no one likes to pay more money on their yearly tax bill. So that's all I'll say. Kevin, please, why don't you fill us in on the ins and outs here? Because as I said, it's a very
there are
complicated issue.
It is a complicated budget. There's a lot of moving pieces here. It's a capital-rich budget, I would say, as far as capital improvements that are included within it. We were a little over $400,000 higher on our general fund. We were. That means a small portion of what that tax increase was, I think $1.51, and change, but a small portion of that was due to those increases in the general fund. Now, coming on top of the fact that there were valuation increases as well, there's a little bit of both of that in there, obviously, but it did cause for a slight raise in the millage points. But John's right. For the most part, the vast majority of what the increases you see are would be that 67.5 cent capital improvement reserve fund SURF levy, and the millage that it takes literally to abate the debt that we would incur on a yearly level for the $3 million bond issuance for the pool and gym projects, which are included in this budget. Of course, we still have decisions to make about that stuff, but we did include it in this budget. And that was, in last year's valuations, that would have been around 79 cents. Obviously, that would have went down just a little bit this year. But as you can see, the vast majority of the increase on a millage level, at least, are related to things that our citizens have voted for and desired to see us do. It is a capital-rich budget, as I said before. You've got a total of on revenues around $51,921,000, and expenditures around $51,563,000. However, your budget's about the spot that it was. You have about $32 million worth of capital improvements included that. And they range far and wide, from the CTG grant improvements that you're going to see down at 12th that we're going to do for that community transformation grant, which will be crosswalk stuff, from something like that to something as grand and comprehensive as our sewer work that we're going to be doing. The vast majority of that $32 million roughly would be accounted for by your sewer improvements at around 19.5, and your not including the stormwater stuff, of course, and your rec project at around 10. That in itself would be around 29 million of the 32. So many of the other capital projects that are in there are not very large expenditures, but there's a lot of them. There's several of them, six or eight of them, I think. And so other things that you see also notable, I think, are the Libertyville extension in the sewer budget. We included that as a part of our wastewater budget. $600,000 item there, though, but it's a grand thing to be happening in a really high growth area. So not only are we doing substantive capital improvements and keeping our budgets for our departments moving forward in a way that is sustainable for us, but we're making huge investments in our economic development efforts as well. And that not only with the Libertyville, as I said, but also with the TIF district on Highway 1, the frontage road project there, opening up a 30-acre development piece for us, hopefully for some housing and a little bit more economic development besides just the Pilot Grove Bank. So it is a larger budget than the city's has seen, but with that comes these major dedications to big future impact public projects like the sewer. So we're proud of the budget we put together. We felt like we kept our individual department budgets at a sustainable and, as I said before, controllable level going forward as far as the growth of them. Everybody came in with budgets that were pragmatic, not wish list, but pragmatic needs, and proud of the department heads for that. I know it's a tough thing to do in this day and age, especially given the relative state of some of our pieces of infrastructure, the elements of it, the streets, the water, the sewer. That's the big and tall of it, but of course any individual questions I would be glad to entertain.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. And again, Council, just in considering just our general fund budget, we are levying the full 810. We are levying 27 cents of what we call an emergency levy, which is more, in my opinion, a supplemental levy. Then you have your liability, emergency management levy. You have your capital improvement reserve fund, as we had mentioned earlier, and your debt service. So both of those, capital improvement and the debt levy, account for the millage rate going up, so it'll be 17.49 from 15.95. Again, as John pointed out, those were voter approved. So at this time, we'll open up a public hearing on the budget and ask if there are any comments or any questions. Not seeing any, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Ask if council has any questions. I know many of you were involved with the budget hearings that Ways and Means held and are familiar with the budget, but if there are any last minute questions here.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. I'm still concerned with allocation of funds that are said to be from the sale or transaction of Logan, and what funds some of that money would go to, above and beyond what our obligation is that we know of with it. If there is a shortfall in what is projected for the sale price, there's going to be some pretty good cuts of items that are listed in there that, frankly, I consider to be fluff. But we need to be at least prepared in our own minds that this may have an adjustment effect on our budget coming up for this next fiscal year in a downward way, rather than where we're currently projecting it to be. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I felt that way about it during our budget hearings. I mentioned it then, and I just felt it was worth mentioning again at this point in time.
I think separating that from the operational budget that we're approving in our general fund, you're absolutely right, and it's a matter of what critical elements there are in that budget that we're actually making
Right, and
promises
those
to,
should
and those
be
and I
taken
think-
care of first.
Absolutely, and I think the council will definitely get a chance to set the priorities on those once that is determined. So we'll have that process hopefully in May or June, as quickly or as soon as possible.
I definitely concur with Darren's comments. I mean, I think I've expressed them before, and I really think, I'm not sure that we're looking down the road in all the right directions. And, I just think that, the time may come when we're going to have to eliminate some of the things that we'd like to have and like to do and look more seriously at the basics.
Well, and a big part of the sale of that asset does address the basics, including the level of reserve funds that we're carrying in areas to make the financial health of the city as strong as possible. Some of the other projects that are in there that would be supported, I agree with you, Martha. It's something that, and Darren, we'll see what those priorities really need to be once we know what revenues we have. So, but we are going to be retaining a lot of those revenues also in reserve
As it
funds.
should be.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Any other discussion? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the budget for 14-15.
So moved.
Moved by Revelinsky,
Second.
second by Hamilton. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Revelinsky.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, Council, we have several items that we're going to be looking for action on regarding the pool bidding process, so I'll ask Andy from Burbach to come up at this time.
Just give me a second, I'll pull this up.
Sure.
Okay, in your packet, you should have a few things from us. There's a set of plans there to look at, and then an authorization letter and the notice to bidders. So I'll start with the letter. Basically, our contract is split into 3 phases. Phase 2 is design, which is what we're currently in, and Phase 3 is public bidding, and then overseeing the construction of the project. So for us to move forward into that, we would need the city council's approval and authorization, so that's what that's for. The notice to bidders is a standard notice that goes out to the papers and the public as a notice that we are proceeding with a bid, and it's a public bid. So those are the 2 action items. I'd like to review the plans with you quickly, and the first page should be a title page. And on that page, there's a couple different sections I'd like to point out. The first on the far left is the description of the pool. So it gives you the pool area, volumes, flow rates, and that kind of thing. It's a little technical, but the main thing is to tell you the size of the pool.
Did we get this attachment? I don't see it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
we
on our
have.
agenda.
Is it, where is it?
It's under
It's
action
under
item.
the public hearing, John.
Public hearing for
Public hearing for plans and
There were two
specifications.
Burbach. There's the letter authorizing Burbach, and
Right
then
here, it says set
under
public
new
hearing for
utility.
plans and specifications.
Okay, it's under
Hit the action item.
Okay,
there,
oh, it's in it.
and,
okay.
Yeah, it'll,
Where's it?
It's under, that set the public hearing.
right,
Yeah, that one, right there.
Yeah.
no, right.
Oh, on down, yeah.
I hear. Oh, I see it. Okay, I do. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on the left, it's pool data, which would be areas, volumes, give you the general description of the pool. Then the more important part of that page is right in the center, which is your schedule, your time frame, which is right there. And if you look, we're sending the notice out, would be this Friday, if everything's approved. And then pre-bid, let me just grab it because I don't have it by memory. So we've got March 14th is a notice. We've got March 31st being a pre-bid meeting. And then April 10th would be open bids, and then you would consider those bids at your regular meeting on the 14th. Then when will the pool be open? It would be the following spring, summer. So your May, June, with a good winter, should have no issues. And actually, we've got plenty of time at this point, if there is any small consideration for weather, that it would still be done in early spring. Okay, so then the next page. Next page is your basic site plan that gives you the pool layout. It's from a top-down view, if you will. It's a plan view. And it's a little bit hard to understand, but the pool is a big portion of it, this area. I'm just going to grab the mic. I think I can do that.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the pool in this larger area. Water slide. We've got a shelter that's actually, I've been told, is at least going to be partially donated, so that's a nice little feature there. And then mechanical building, which would be where all the process piping, filters, any of the, I'll call them guts of the pool would go. And then up here is your bathhouse. And then this would be green space, so it'd be a grass area. And actually, it's somewhat of a berm, so that if somebody wants to sit at it, they can overlook the pool. It's a nice little feature. Plenty of green space inside the fence. We've got some fabric shade structures that are nice, and a concession area too for a food court, if you will, that people can sit at, and if they want some nachos or a drink, have them there. We also have some diving towers and a large play structure in the zero depth area. So the pool is compliant to the Iowa code at this time, and there's some federal regulations such as ADA that we need to look at, and all that's been designed in. It's a complete pool when we're done, ready to be occupied and used. The next page gives you a little bit.
Before you go on, could you just, like, is this over the existing pool now? Like, where's the existing pool on there?
Yeah, the existing pool, the diving hopper is in this area, so it's just a little bit north and tilted.
Okay.
The bathhouse actually sits right.
The present bathhouse is there.
Right, the existing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that gives me an idea. Thank you.
Okay. The next page is still a site plan, but it gives you where the concrete is and where the grass is. So it kind of separates that for you so you can understand how much green space there is. And I won't spend too much time on that, but I wanted to include that just so you could reference it in case there's questions. Then the next page is the floor plans of the buildings. Anytime with a bathhouse, there's a lot of showers and fixtures that are required by code. So that's the main portion of the building, would be your toilets and shower areas. And there is a family restroom to the inside of the pool, so that if a mom wanted to take a son in there quickly while they're at the pool, they have that. There's also some lockers and a concession area for we haven't really discussed what you're going to use it for, but typically nachos, hot dogs, maybe some pizzas, ice cream sandwiches, things like that. So you can make that as complex or as basic as you want. Are there any questions with the layouts? This is on the left-hand side. It's a mechanical building. Shows you a couple filters and pumps. So, okay. Then the next 2 pages are just their elevations. First of the bathhouse, and this would be the front entrance. We've got some windows on that entrance side, and in the gable we also have a window just to let some natural lighting in. Potentially this building could be one that doesn't have to use the lighting during the day because of the natural lighting. There are obviously times when you're going to need that, but the way it's designed is to let maximum amount of natural lighting in. So that's your basic elevation. Again, you got lockers on the pool side. Any questions with that? It's not real pretty, but it's an engineering drawing. So. And then the last page is the mechanical building elevation, which if you didn't think the bathhouse was pretty, that's really not. So, but it is a walkout bathhouse, which means, or excuse me, mechanical building, which means that the pool water is actually higher in elevation than the floor of the mechanical building. So that'll give us flooded suction in the pumps, which just means they're a little bit easier to operate and maintain. It's a nice little feature at the park there that we've got the grade to work with, that we can have a mechanical building with a floor lower than the pool water. So we took advantage of that, and that's the basic idea. The plans, there are about 52 pages, so you got a little brief introduction to them. But if there's any questions, I can take them. Otherwise, again, the main objective tonight is to authorize phase 3, which is bidding and construction, and to look at the public notice to bidders and take action on those 2 things.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. How many separate bids within the entire project are there?
Sure. The way we set our projects up is we've got 3 contracts, so potentially there could be 3 bids, meaning that contract 1 is the pool contract. They would do the concrete of the pool decks, anything specialized to that concrete. And then the second part is the mechanical contract, which is contract 2. And that's for your filters, your process piping. And then the third is the general contract, which is the buildings, the fencing, sodding, grading, things that your local, electrical, plumbing, things that your local contractors can do. And then typically we'll have a combination bid where all 3 of those get bid out, meaning that there's a different contractor for all 3. Then alternatively, we do have a combination bid that would allow one prime to bid it. And then they would have multiple subs working on the project. So there's the option to go either way. If you have 3 bids from one contractor and that happens to be low, then that's the bid you would go with. And if the single prime would happen to be low, that would be the bid you'd go with. So.
Okay, great. Any other questions, Council? Okay. Thank you, Andy. So what we'll do then is, since this first action item is based on this planning, and it would be setting a public hearing for approval of plans and specifications. We would do that the same night that we would be looking at the bids, which is typical for our construction projects. So simply this evening, I'd like to set a public hearing for April 14th at our meeting.
I just have a comment or a question before we move ahead with this. I'm a little uncomfortable approving building the pool without meeting with the committee who's building the pool and the rec center, which got approved as a joint venture, since the funding is not yet in place.
Should have clarified this, sorry. Putting out these bids doesn't actually authorize or force us to actually move forward. So in April, when we have hard numbers, at that time we can decide, do we
Pull
move
the
forward on
trigger or not.
construction? Yep.
So
this is
at least we'll
actually-
know exactly what it's going to cost us because we'll have bids.
We'll have real numbers. So that's extremely useful on a project that's been such a moving target for so long. And between now and then, the task force will really come up with some hard numbers, what they can expect to fundraise further and how much they might spend in the gym. So by April, by our first meeting in April, we'll have a much better idea whether or not we're ready. So this step doesn't authorize us or make us in any way obligated to move forward in April.
And that's
Yes.
your understanding?
Yes, Michael's right. This is just to keep us moving forward and getting our numbers so we know what we're actually looking at as far as the numbers.
We have to accept the bid before we can start.
Yeah, you'll have to accept a bid and before we actually start the practice of doing the construction project. But this keeps us moving forward, gives us a number that's bona fide for at least half of our projects.
And part of the reason we're trying to keep moving forward is if we do pull the trigger and start construction, we can be ready for an actual open season next year.
Yeah.
If we don't do this now, we might miss that deadline. And
We missed the deadline. We'd also
another
Thank you.
entire summer without a pool. So
yeah.
No, it's clear to me now. Thank you.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion then to set the public hearing for April 14th.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton, second by Flournoy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next would be approval of the letter, let me just believe, authorizing the,
Authorizing phase 3.
okay. Let's get that open here. Okay, so the letter that Andy referred to would be authorizing Burback and Associates to initiate and perform Phase 3 of professional services. Again, what is in Phase 3, Andy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, phase 3 is the bidding, and then
Okay.
assuming everything moves forward, that's the construction phase, so that we would be on site during concrete pours and while the building's being.
Right. So this is third and final phase.
In the event that the project got interrupted for a year, how does that affect this Phase 3 professional service agreement?
Well-
We'd still be engaged in it,
Yeah.
but we'd be basically holding a pattern, but we'd be engaged within phase 3.
Yeah.
Why, Andy?
Yeah, basically, the plan right now is to move forward with a notice on Friday of this week. If for some reason between now and then we were told to hold off, we'd hold on that. You're authorizing us, but it doesn't mean we're moving forward until we get that everybody's okay and we're doing it.
Yeah. We still have to authorize spending the money.
We have to engage in phase 3 to be able to kick out the bids. Basically, the bidding starts phase 3.
I just want to know what we're committing to.
Yeah, and with the bidding too, there's a 60-day window for the contractor to hold his bids. So that gives you a little leadway too if we go out to bid and there's still some concern. If the project comes in way under budget, everybody's happy, and I'm sure you want to take advantage of that. But
And again, that would help those discussions going forward. Because we
Exactly.
do have two projects. It would be good to know if they came in under bid.
right.
And we would know. And on Wednesday night, one of the things that we hope to do is to come up with, John, with a number that everyone feels comfortable with the two projects and, move forward with a plan to fund that and then begin the construction as soon as we can. But nothing will be spent until we have that agreement.
We did think about putting 90 days on there, but it probably likely would have affected the bids a little bit at 90 days. That's a little, that extra month matters. So we went with 60 for reasons that Ed has illustrated.
Okay. We have a motion. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion then to approve the Phase 3 letter engaging Burbach Aquatics in this final phase.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
By Rasmussen. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. And then the final action then would be to authorize proceeding with the notice to bidders for this process that Andy has described will go out on Friday. You have a copy of the notice, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the notice of bidders.
So moved.
Moved by Flournoy,
Second.
second by Hamilton. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Okay, thank you. Andy, thank you. I think we're going to see you on Wednesday as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Ed, do we need the resolution for local bidder preference as part of this?
We could do that now. Let's, we'll leave it on there. We'll just get back to our
Okay.
regular agenda, let Andy go. Then council will move to setting a public hearing for nuisance abatements. That'll be also at our April 14th meeting, so just entertain a motion to set that public hearing.
So
Moved by Revelinsky.
Second.
Second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. And then we also was setting a public hearing for plans and specifications and form of contract for footage of Highway 1 South. Again, that's within our TIF district. So we will be, what other actions will we be taking on the 14th, Kevin?
I was going to say, Melanie, you want to go ahead and speak
You want me
this?
to give you the details on the frontage road project?
Good evening, Melanie. Thank you.
Out here. The existing frontage road in front of the Christian church and where Pilot Grove is building is a 24-foot wide, which is narrower than what you would want for an arterial street. So this project is to widen that as well as correct the drainage. In this case, everything is very flat out there, and there's currently a nice swimming pool,
Pond.
no pun intended, right on top of the trail. So this project does,
Put more towards that
engineers
road.
can save you money. So this project starts with 600 feet of 31-foot across curb and gutter section. This takes you from the intersection of Highway 1, Libertyville Road, and then reconstructs the portion in front of the Christian church. We're doing alternates between 7-inch concrete or 8-inch asphalt with 6 inches of rock underneath. Once you get to Pilot Grove, then we turn and head east with it. At that point, we are going to, I didn't write down the total. We're going to the complete street typical section, which is a 5-foot sidewalk with 11.5 feet of green space. And then you get to your curb and gutter. And then in your curb and gutter or your street width, you've got a 4.5-foot bike lane and an 11-foot driving lane. So with the trail being along the north-south portion of the frontage road, we didn't add bike lanes or sidewalks there. But then once we turn east with that, we'll do the complete streets section. So we're looking at 1,150 feet or approximately 4,000 square yards for this project. We will be paving a portion of the trail to be used as temporary access for the Christian church. We have met with them and talked about how they'll maintain access during construction. We are suggesting that the contractor has $1 million of general liability and $3 million of umbrella for that. As far as schedule, we want the contractor to have up to Pilot Grove's first entrance paved by June 15th. This is coincides with their opening. That leaves probably about 300 feet that they can do after Pilot Grove opens, but for this small a job, the contractor's probably going to do it all at once. We're looking at $500 a day liquidated damages beyond that June 15th date. As far as bid schedule, we will send out the notices this Friday, so a very similar schedule to what we're talking with the pool. Send out notices to contractor this Friday. Then open bids on April 10th, which is the Thursday before your April council meeting, so that you can consider the bids on April 14th. We are looking at a construction cost estimate of $383,000. And Kevin, do you want to talk about how this is being paid for then?
Yes, ma'am. Basically, this is our economic development TIF district that we expanded from our original American district. And the Pilot Grove project, of course, is the linchpin for this thing. It's going to come in at around $2.5–3 million worth of building. There again, for every $1 million that we generate in incremental tax improvement, we get to about $36,000 a year off of that in cash in order to abate yearly any cost related to the improvements that were necessary to make the project happen. So in this case, we're going to come in with more increment than we really need to pay off our improvement costs for the initial phase, and that's a great thing. That's always a good thing to leave some increment on the table. and it will, of course, take us to that east point where the ending of the property of Pilot Grove is, and we'll be looking then at the property stubbed into that we hope to develop a standalone housing TIF district, which we're working on that with the owner, Mr. Hickenbottom, of the property so far, and Adam working on that with us at FIDA. He's jumped in neck deep already and all this stuff, so that's going very well, and that's how we're going to pay for it, basically, this first phase. We will be talking to developers about the further housing district and all that stuff over the next month or so, and we'll be bringing some stuff to you guys about that. But this one certainly is looking like it's going to turn out quite well. If you can only use about half your increment, it's a really good thing. So.
And Kevin, the $383,000 upfront for the construction, we will be funding how?
We would be incurring that under a note. Now, we were hoping at one point that we could do these actions together with the pool. If we went ahead with that, we could. If we didn't, we'd just be taking out a note here for this project, a TIF-related note. So, it can be a TIF issuance or it could be a GO issuance to give us the alternative of other payment methods. We do have that decision down the road, a little piece here before we borrow the money. And we'll get into the ins and outs of what would be better to do at that point. But that is essentially how it will work as any TIF district that the city's done in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Melanie? If not, entertain a motion to set the public hearing for April 14th for approving plans and specifications.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thanks. Thank you, Melanie. Next, we have an amended final plat for Prairie Lakes subdivision, and we have a copy of that. Ed Harvey, the owner of that, is here. Ed?
This is essentially what we did last time. It just corrects a typo in the legal description.
Okay.
An apt description. And we are ready to go on this one. So.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Hallie, second by Flournoy to approve the amended final plat for Prairie Lakes subdivision. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing the issuance and for levying tax on the $3 million general obligation capital notes, presuming that's our pool expenditures. Kevin, I know you and I hadn't had a chance to talk about this before the meeting, our decision to execute these at this point in time.
Yes,
Explain to the council.
this is basically sort of authorizing it, pre-authorization for our, including it in our budget. It's related to that. Since it's in our budget, we need to go ahead and go through with this process. Of course, there would be another moment such as this that we would consider again before we actually were to do the action. But this would be necessary to, as we've set it up within our budget.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that, council? Now entertain a motion then to authorize the issuance of levying for the $3 million in general obligation notes to complete support the revenue portion of our budget.
So move.
Moved by Hallie, second by Flournoy. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Hallie,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Hammes,
Yes.
Revelinsky,
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, council, is approval of a tax abatement application for 1205 Walton Road. Steve Knoll. Do you have a copy of that? Any comments on that, Kevin?
I would just say that we do find all three of these applications to be in order, but I would like to speak to one of those. Mr. Patrick White's application is related to sewer work for that new business that he has opened up. Not sure whether or not that the county will clear that or be able to clear that. In other words, will that actually increase by 10% the value? I'm not sure about that, but I think it is in order for us to clear it and see if they do. For our part in it, I think it certainly qualifies for our part in approving these abatements, or tax abatements. But I'm just not sure if that's because literally that is something that would be the case anyway, and a business would have to have a sewer hookup. But in his particular case, it could cause for a 10% increase. I'm not sure, but I am a little bit skeptical. But I do feel it's appropriate for us to clear it.
Okay. Okay, council, then on our city administrator's recommendation, entertain a motion to, we'll take them one at a time, approve the tax abatement application for Stephen Knoll at 1205 Walton Road.
So moved.
Moved by Revelinsky,
Second.
second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. And the next would be for Patrick White at 403 North 4th Street.
Move to approve.
Okay, moved by Hammes,
Second.
second by Hamilton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. And then the third one would be for Charles Viola at 1004 South C Street.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hammes.
Second.
Second by Revelinsky. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have two items that are part of our qualification for the Blue Zones designation, as we discussed in January. These are policies that we would be putting in place regarding our street construction going forward and also land use protection. You probably got a chance to read through the description of the complete streets policy. All of these are obviously with the understanding that, you know, should we have the resources to construct and build in this way, we will build in this way. Where we are constrained, we are not really forced to do that, but we are setting up a complete streets policy. Kevin, anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Your Honor, to that point.
definition, yeah.
Exactly, to that point, you know, feasible, the word feasible is in there. And that, you know, there's going to be different reasons for maybe a project not being feasible, but that'll certainly be up to council at the time. Largely, we borrowed a lot of the body of this ordinance, or the elements as you see them under, you see the resolution, then you see the elements in the attachment there from Angola, or I'm sorry, Alagona. Yeah, wow, I didn't know how to, you know, Angola way ahead of most of continental Africa, but Alagona, we borrowed most of that from their doing of it, and I think they've had a pretty good experience with it so far, and I don't think they've turned down a lot of projects that they've looked at for feasibility, so I don't want to make it that nothing's feasible. I think a lot of things will be feasible for us, but I do think in our more dense areas downtown, it's tough to get those right-of-ways sometimes, so.
Again, these are streets that are pedestrian-friendly.
Yes. And each one of these streets,
Transit
basically,
friendly.
it's both your sidewalks on either side. You got sidewalk on either side. You have the bike lanes. You know, all modes of traffic are attentive.
These things can also be phased in, to be done at the origination of the project.
They could. I think. Well, you know, you would have to secure right-of-ways and stuff. But certainly, you could phase in like sidewalks and things like that for a project if it were necessary to do so to make it work. Yeah, it's a good point.
I just had a comment. There's a lot of nice stuff in both of these policies. I just wondered if Scott Tim has any comments on it. Are you familiar with these? Have you looked at them?
I don't have any comments.
You don't have any comments?
It certainly fits into where we've been headed. You know, the CTG grant is complementing that as well, and we have some other ideas hopefully down the road in the next year or two that we could do with our pedestrian infrastructure that could be interesting and effective as well.
And they're non-binding.
Yes, indeed they are.
It's kind of more of a statement than anything.
The council will be approving each individual complete streets project. We'll have to do it that way probably, because it'll require us to do a little bit more in your typical action of a street overlay or you know, new street rebuild.
I'll move to approve.
Yeah, well, thank you, Michael. Motion to approve the
Second.
complete streets policy, second by Hammes. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. And then we have our land use protection, and again, this is jurisdiction over community gardens and farmers markets. Now, I think obviously we have you know, a very active and engaged farmers market with farmers markets twice a week, year-round. I think we're probably already pretty much qualifying there. If there were another farmers market that desired to open, then that would be protected under this as well. The area that may be a little bit new is our community gardens. We really haven't had any successful activity in the community garden area. There has been some talk about that over the years. There have been people who have done some individual initiatives. I think if you know, if something like that does get underway, having policy to underscore that and support it would be very helpful.
And again, these are non-binding. If you look at the bullet points, the verbiage, the action words are encourage, identify, facilitate. There's nothing in there that's forcing us to do anything. But this does fit nicely into some work our sustainability coordinator is doing with what college is it? ISU? Yeah, we're doing a free study with an ISU professor who's looking into ways that local laws currently prohibit but could be changed to encourage local food production. This kind of fits into that. We should be doing a community garden project this summer as part of the Blue Zones. I just spoke with one of the master gardeners, and actually I think I'll work with them because they have certain requirements to get that designation. So they're a group who are basically hungry for projects. So we should be seeing something this summer.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
And I'll also make a motion to adopt this one.
Motion to adopt this land use policy for farmers markets and community gardens, second by Revelinsky. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have the second reading of a tree planting ordinance. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Ask if there's any public comment. Not seeing any, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Any comments that we've received, Kevin, at City Hall or council members?
Indeed, Your Honor, we did. We had a couple of calls and had a couple of meetings with folks, including Farm Bureau, about concern about the ordinance, the way that it was written. When we did write it, we felt like that we put certainly enough capability of dealing with it in a non-onerous fashion, so to speak. There's a section in there that on the exemptions, I guess you could call them, where number 5, I think it was, the city administrator or his designee, which typically would be our street superintendent, or Daryl, who's our public works director. We could have another position designated as a street superintendent, but that would be still my designee, for instance. Being able to, for whatever reason that might be the case, being able to get around that 30-inch heritage tree removal or whatever. Maybe it was a construction project that it would completely stop, or maybe the tree, for whatever reason. There's also a section in there that says economic hardship, if the situation was going to cause economic hardship. We felt that was good enough. As far as ways where we could work with this ordinance, work with a private property owner, because we are going further than we've typically gone here before in having a heritage tree section, a 30-inch tree being that preservation number. But with that discussions with Farm Bureau and a few others, we felt that it was quite reasonable that we include in there what you would call standard exemptions. A lot of environmental code you see, typically stormwater codes and things like that, they have standard exemptions, and they are always going to be agriculture, silviculture, which is tree logging, basically the tree industry, logging and other tree practices, and mining. Now, mining isn't that important in this situation, but we felt like that putting into this ordinance the standard exemption for agricultural activity, use lots, and that's use lots. It may be an R1, but if it's under agricultural use, because of course when you come into the city, you come in as R1 right now. What we'll be proposing one day is that when you come into the city, you come in as an ag. And our ag district in the new zoning code, per se, would be a conservation district. And that would mean, agricultural practices, silvicultural practices, straight up conservation, in other words, fallow field practices or whatever. And those taxes would be actually cheaper than it would be to pay on the same lot under production in the county. Now, the key being, we don't want our tree ordinance to be prohibitive to bringing in those future speculative farming pieces. We want farmers to be quite comfortable coming into the city as a conservation area where we're encouraging that agricultural activity. It's good for us, it's good for our environment. One of our big emphases, of course, is being on organic gardening, and a lot of those lots may go to that. So we included this exemption in here so that farmers were completely understanding and comfortable of the exemptions being substantive enough and doing what they wanted to see as far as control. Part of that being pesticide application. Of course, the folks I talked to, I think when they understood the only pesticide we're really talking about here is the ash tree applications, I think that made them feel better too. But essentially this exemption exempts those ag pieces from the code, from the heritage tree section and from the pesticide code. And we think that's okay, because basically the real preservation we were worried about on lots was not our outside rural larger farm lots. It was really our inside the city more dense areas where those trees matter so much and mean so much to us as far as the quality of life goes. So we never intended this to be an anti-agricultural bill or an encroachment or onerous encroachment of regulatory purview on our citizens. What we're trying to do here is encourage quality of life. We feel like this exemption does all that and more. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Mike.
No, I agree. Those are natural exemptions. Obviously, anybody in the forestry business, that's not going to apply for a heritage tree protection. And agriculture, the same thing. If you need to clear an area of trees to do what you do, there shouldn't be these restrictions. It's really, this was designed for our urban forest, our more in the city areas. So, yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that this is a reason we do 3 readings. Mr. Flanagan sometimes likes to encourage us to jump. Well, we do 3 readings because we want people to give feedback, and it's good feedback.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say is that a part of those guys that came to see me, a couple of them brought forward the state code that does have protections for pesticide and other applications for agriculture, which is, we want to see that, don't we? Being an ag state that we are, in an ag area, historically rich with ag, but, you know, there also is an exemption in that state code for commercial activities or activities with commerciality to them. That really is what we're talking about when we're talking about what we're trying to do with the pesticides here. It's, you know, the arborist or the tree company hired coming in and applying it. So that's, we think now it does what we are aiming to do, but it also protects those that need to be protected.
And just to make a comment about the ban on the topical treatments, the thinking is, I've got some interesting data here. It's a report put together by University of Minnesota, Michigan State University, and Ohio State University, and it includes all these regulations of how those topical treatments should be applied to stay away from water. But when you read it, it would be so easy for anyone to not follow this, because these pesticides don't require any sort of training. These are over the counter, and it could easily get into the water supply, which is not a good thing. And it also has some negative side effects, possible bee decline, possible killing of beneficial insects that prey upon more nasty insects like mosquitoes. I look at this very similar to smoking laws versus drinking laws. Smoking, the secondhand smoke spreads, so there you've taken the right to do that to yourself, but then now you're imposing that on everyone who's within smelling distance of your secondhand smoke, which is why collectively we have laws against that. If somebody chooses to drink alcohol, on the other hand, they're putting it into their body, not affecting those around them. That's why we're saying let's not do these topical treatments where someone's dumping it into the ground and then spreading it into everyone's water supply, potentially, and instead do injections which are specific into the tree and stays in the tree and has a more effective it's more effective against CAB that way. So that's the idea. It's not being anti-ag or anti-anything. It's just basically between the 2 types of treatments. One is very selective and focused, and that's the injections, and that's the one that's permitted, and it's also done by trained professionals. And the other is potentially more harmful to the entire environment outside of just that particular tree. And it's also not as easy for people to follow the laws. There are very strict laws on the label, how much of this you're allowed to put in a certain area. So if I had several ash trees in my yard and I did them all, I'd most likely be breaking the law right there. So I actually sent this current version of our ordinance to my friends at the DNR, and they're having the legal team look at it. And just, you know, I want to make sure that it's still doing what we want it to do. It's working within obviously all the state regulations and keeping in the spirit of not imposing something too much, but also protecting our water supply and just basically the natural environment from overzealous treatment. Because if you don't have anything in place and people aren't following the label, well, we don't have anyone who's going to go around and police that. So this is kind of, it's a little bit broad, it's not fine-tuned, but if we just say, okay, that we're not going to use these on our property, then it does take care of that potential for contamination.
A question, and you may have covered this, but so we're saying the agricultural land that's designated as agriculture use are not subject to restriction even on the pesticide?
Neither the pesticide nor the heritage tree sections. And those are new sections anyway, so it's
I mean,
still...
it's not like we got a bunch of trees in our agricultural land anyway.
Yeah.
But why would we exempt them from the pesticide requirement when it's such a bad thing and it's our city?
Basically, because within state code, there is a provision protecting the right of agricultural interests.
We do
for
live in
land or other
Iowa, so the
applications.
state code is ag-friendly, and it does say something about on ag land.
In that regard, that's regarding their land use also, for
Yeah.
their fields, for their crops, for their
Exactly.
not just for trees.
So again, it's up to them.
It's more about that, actually, yeah.
And I would actually trust the person on ag land to follow the regulations on something like this more than just, I'm not trying to say anything, but just somebody who's never used something like this before and goes out and buys it and just starts dumping it all around their ash tree.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, if you cast too wide a net, it's going to be too hard for you to pull in, and when you do, you're going to have fish you don't want in it. That is basically the situation there. We felt like we might have been casting too large a net that first time. Let's narrow this down to what we're really looking at as far as reality.
We can't pass an ordinance that overrules state law.
And that's true too.
yep.
So
Well, it's interesting. I've got a document that says sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's very unclear. So I'm
very
working
unclear.
on. I think this is good, and if we pass
Yeah.
this, it's still good. But the third reading, I might have a slight modification. We'll see. See what I hear back. But for now, this is good. It follows all the laws, and it's ag friendly, and I feel good about it.
Okay, so entertain a motion then to approve from the second to the third reading as amended, with amended language.
So moved.
Moved by Hallie,
Second.
second by Hamas. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Hallie,
Yes.
Hamas,
Yes.
Rivalinsky,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy.
yes,
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we have policy and procedures for a new utility account. Kevin, would you take that?
Yes, Your Honor. This is in relation to when you set up an account, actually having your identification with you. And this is protection for the city and protection for the applicant as well. And of course, it has been our policy for many, many years, certainly, but it was not in writing. And John has been good enough to prepare this for us so that it would be in writing and as part of our standard protocols.
the first ordinance here that he hands
It's not,
Yes.
Yes,
This is
it's
a
the ordinance
resolution.
that was
right.
passed out.
Right.
So we have it on by resolution. Is this being done by ordinance?
Agenda resolution.
Yeah, we included as a
It's an
addition to our
amendment to
ordinance,
the
amendment to ordinance, yeah.
That's what it is, so it'll have to have 3 readings.
Yeah.
It won't be a resolution.
Or if you could waive the readings, of course, and just go ahead and read once. It's a requirement for identification only, would be the only change here. You had to present your identification to set up your account. And you could fax that to us, I do want to say publicly. One could fax that, or PDF that to us from a location. We have done that before with someone, so.
Well, again, let me ask John. Let me ask John first, since we have this listed on our agenda as a resolution, John, and it's being presented as an ordinance, which is a public hearing. I don't know that we can really take this as business this evening.
Actually, we
Without,
probably ought to set the public hearing for the ordinance
Yeah.
for the next time.
Okay, let's do
You
that.
could read one of the ordinance's readings, though, tonight. You can have your public hearing in any of the 3 readings, so if you want to consider it, you could still consider it tonight.
It's pretty benign. I'd feel comfortable going from first to second reading and then having our public hearing next time.
And then we second read it and go.
Because it's
it is.
basically, it's just putting in writing that we're going to protect the private customer information of anyone who's using a city utility.
In other words, you must present ID
Yeah.
after some fashion
To get that
Here's
information.
the,
to get your account set up, to set up an account or have activity.
It solidifies a policy that has been held in the front office here for quite some time and puts it in actual legal fashion so that it's clear to everyone and it's on the city code.
okay. All right, so we'll then take this up as an ordinance and entertain first reading. And again,
I would move from the first to the second reading.
moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Hallie. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign.
Can we move to set the public hearing on our March 24th meeting?
Yeah, I'm not sure we need to do that at this point, John. I think we just get it on our agenda for, yeah, and we'll just get it on our agenda next time as a second reading.
Local bidder.
So then we'll go to our resolution regarding local bidder preference, and this is by resolution. Kevin, you want to give us the...
Yes, Your Honor. Basically, what this would allow, now there's a lot of different ways that that cities have chose to do this. I think I've got one document I think that has maybe 8 or 9 cities listed in it. Many of them quite liberal. You're seeing like 5 and 10%. State code reads, can't remember the exact verbiage, but basically it says relatively the same, 2 bids relatively the same. The way the language reads, we felt like it would be safest and most appropriate if basically from 0 to 50,000, you're going to see a 1% or 2% difference, and then from 50 to 100, you're going to see a 1% difference being the difference maker that would have you giving it to that local versus that out-of-town bidder. This way, we're not discouraging bidding practice and the competitiveness of our bidding practice. However, we are showing that we will give preference to a local bidder on stuff when it's quote that close. And I can tell you once, since I even got here about within the last year and a half, there was a situation where this would have made that difference. Local bidder would have gotten it, and I really would wish that they had have. So,
Is there a reason we didn't go for like 5%?
I felt like, to be honest, I felt like when you get up into the 5 and 10% mark, number one, I feel like we're becoming, we're getting ourselves in a little bit of jeopardy with that state language, because relatively the same to me as a former bidder, very frequently for state, local, and federal projects. I don't think it's really appropriate to say 5 or 10% myself. I don't think
10 is one thing, but 5% is relatively the same.
It's a lot more than 2 or 1, though. As a bidder,
well, I mean, okay. The way I look at it is, there are benefits to local economy to have business stay in your city.
Yes.
Does it, are the benefits as much as 5% of the project? They may be. I mean, it would be interesting to do an analysis of it.
And 5%, you meaning 50,000 and below? You mean for the smaller? I just think
2 or something.
When you look at the state code written the way that ours is written, it's almost like what's worthy of challenge. And if I'm a bidder, 5% might be and 1 not. Or 2 not, I guess it's council's prerogative, really. If you want to go 5%, we could.
It requires a lot of maintenance, like an automobile or mowers. That you might have.
What do you consider a local bidder?
To me, a local bidder would be an in-county. In the same county or community quote.
Flip side of this is that our local contractors do bid on jobs outside of our community as well. So I don't know if we want to make it too restrictive, because it works both ways. We don't want to be unfriendly to outside.
You don't want to flirt with challenge on this thing, but you don't want to discourage active competitive bidding. And
Are we ever asked the question, and maybe Melanie or John could answer this too, we ever asked the question during a bidding process or prior to a bidding process if the city has a local bidding preference resolution? Is that ever a concern? The question is just, would something like that at too high a level create a disincentive for companies to bid?
I think at the 1 and 2% that you're talking about, you're not going to see that.
No, but at 5?
5, definitely at 10, you start to see it.
Right.
When Illinois was considering it, it was a 10%, wasn't it? Come on up. I haven't had a chance to read this.
And I apologize, I walked in late and didn't hear all of your deliberation, but speaking now as a consulting engineer, not as a French Rediker person, consulting engineers are generally against any local preference issues, because what it does is it creates, what happened in Iowa is when Illinois had a bidder preference, Iowa adopted a law that said anybody around us that has a preference, we mirror that. So if an Illinois person comes into Iowa, they have the same thing that applies. And that's the danger from cities and counties and everything like that you'll see. What's the definition of local? At 1 or 2% probably is not a big deal. 5, I think it is. Are you defining it as only construction? Are you defining it as only, is that going to be applying to, well, professional services? Is it going to apply to accountants as well as engineers and all those? It gets to be very difficult. Also keep in mind that on any federal involvement projects, it can't apply.
Right.
Yeah, federal
Right.
projects and grant projects would be exempt. Sole source bidding is exempt, which I've been in this business a long time, but I've done that once in maybe 15 years, a sole source bid, and it was necessary at that moment, so it wouldn't apply to those. But
And also on the definition of local, is it, or something to consider, is it that they just have a mailing address in the county, that they have their headquarters within the county, that, you know, they have a job trailer, depending on how you want to define that.
Yeah.
It's in our ordinance.
Okay. And I apologize that I haven't reviewed the whole thing.
it's written for near misses, and that's what it really should be for.
I think that's a very good description, what it is, because we've seen them over the years. They're actually relatively infrequent, so, but to have something that you can rely on, and I do agree with you, John, that 5% is probably going a little too high, because I'm a little afraid of the disincentive, because a lot of times, you know, there are some of those outside contractors that are really well below anyone else, and even engineers' estimates, so we want to make sure we get those bidders in on our projects. But we're hearing 1% and 2%, so we're saying local business enterprise shall be allowed 2% consideration for bids, 50,000, and 1% consideration for 100,000. You could go just 2% across the board instead of
I would offer that amendment.
Don't break it up by.
Just 2% up to 100,000, because of course over 100,000 we're going to seal bids anyway. So
Right.
I think that's legitimate. Yeah.
So John, you make that,
Yeah, that's
then
it.
approve with that amendment, then up to $100,000, 2%.
Second.
Is there a second by Hamilton? Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Colonel Linsky.
Are we voting on the amendment or the ordinance?
Ordinance.
The amended ordinance,
Yeah.
yes.
But it's actually a resolution. It's a resolution.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Friendly.
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, Council, we'll move to our presentation by Scott Tim on his activities over the past year. Scott?
Good evening. Did everybody receive my report?
Yes.
Okay. I was hired as the sustainability coordinator for the city in 2009, so I'm now going into my 5th year on the job. For the last year and a half, we've been working on the Hometown Rewards program, and that's really been my focus in the city of Fairfield. And that was a grassroots energy efficiency campaign, which the city was very successful in. So we started with a group of about 15 people who met, shared goals. We came up with 10 different goals and 37 strategies to reduce citywide energy use. Our goal was 4%. We exceeded that. We made 8.5%, which ends up at 10,200,000 kilowatt hours. So that equals about $1 million in savings for the community, and that's across all sectors. So business, as well as residential and government. We had over half the town participated in the program in one way or another. So through workshops, energy pledges, what have you, we had almost 5,000 people participated in the program, which was really exciting. We also had 2,125 volunteer hours in the project. A lot of that was with the Habitat for Humanity build, as well as the planting of a community orchard. So we now have, our community orchard is doing really well, and we've raised about $25,000 that's gone into that community orchard, which is located right next to Chautauqua Park. In all, we raised $1,042,000 that was leveraged from that $73,000 investment from Alliant Energy. That includes a loan. It was a grant from Department of Administrative Services that I wrote that went through FEDA and the Chamber, and that was administered to local banks with the idea that residents could take out loans to do energy efficient upgrades in their homes. So things like solar, HVAC, hot water, they can take out those loans at a very low interest rate through their bank. So all in all, and there were just many aspects to this program. I don't want to go on and on. I listed a lot of it in the report. But we had Pence Elementary showed a really sharp decrease in their energy use. We weatherized, in the last 3 years, we've weatherized about 55 homes. We really had just tremendous community support for this program. So been very thankful to work on that. And because of that, the City of Fairfield won the Governor's Environmental Excellence Award for energy efficiency. So all around, really great.
And Scott, also to mention that Fairfield was the first city in Alliance Hometown Rewards program to complete the program. We not only completed it in the 18 months, we were the first to do so. We were not the first city in.
We were not the first to enter.
I don't know how many other cities right now are in the Hometown Rewards program or how long they've been in it, but it's proven very difficult for those communities to do this. And it really, you made that point about volunteers. I know there were over 200 volunteers, I believe, that helped with a lot of those energy efficiency upgrades within homes around the city.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the reward that we got?
Sure. So as our final reward, we received $71,000 to run the project, basically. And then in the end, Alliant Energy donated a total of $23,000. Is that right? $23,000 was their final contribution towards a solar array on the public library. And so we are in the process of putting up an energy kiosk where people can see in real time the energy savings because of that solar array. But then also available will be all the materials that we've developed and put forward by Alliant, so people have a single place where they can come to learn, where they can have contractors, where they can find rebate information, all that kind of stuff will be located in the library. The library was very helpful in a lot of this. We ran all of our workshops and everything kind of came out of the library.
And I can add that we know we've saved more than $700 in our utility bills just since September, even with this terrible winter.
It's very good. Very encouraging.
So I'm kind of a what's next type of person. I really enjoy going into larger projects, and so we're kind of reinitiating the Go Green Commission, which will be made up of 13 people who really well represent the community, a really wide range of abilities. I'm very excited about working with those people. I've been asked to help Derek coordinate the Natty Land property project. I'm working with Michael on the tree ordinance and the emerald ash borer, all the work that's going along with that, a lot of public outreach. Written a grant for $10,000 to replant trees on Central Park as well as O.B. Nelson Park. So continue to do a lot of public outreach and educational work as well as grant writing and whatever way I can serve the city. I'm happy to. I really enjoy my work.
Great. Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Any questions for Scott at this time?
Okay. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I will say that I have found Scott to be a tireless advocate for the city's and the community's interests while I've been here, and it's hard to understand how he finds as much time to do what he does the way he does it, but he's constantly, we touch base on many different things as you can imagine, but his expertise is constantly coming in more than handy, and the grant writing and everything else, I tell you, just a tireless advocate, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Kevin. Also mentioned, Council, that with the completion of the Hometown Rewards project, I think we significantly impressed Alliant Energy, and they are also aware that a lot of what contributed to that were the solar installations that were done during that period of time as well, totaling about 250 kilowatts developed within our community. There was interest in developing a community, privately there's been some interest in developing a community solar program where larger arrays would be constructed, and then there would be a way for individual property owners to either lease or purchase those elements. And there are discussions going on right now within Alliant to actually do their own community solar project program, which we should learn about sometime in the next couple of months. I think Fairfield is being targeted as one of the pilots for something like that. I can't say that we've been selected as one of the pilots or that it even exists at this point, but when it comes out, I think we're going to have another busy year in this arena, and I know we'll be relying on Scott to guide us through that. And along with that, when we finished our Go Green plan in 2009 and appointed a sustainability commission, it sort of dissolved over time, and Scott has been working independently, I think, with some of these other activities that are coming up. I'd like to reappoint a new commission at this time. I'm not sure whether everyone received the names. They were okay. Very good. So of those 13 members, Faith Reeves, Aaron Hirschberg, Christopher Welch, Amy Van Beek, Anna Bruin, Adam Plague, Michael Cook, Tom Barrett, Stuart Valentine, Lonnie Gamble, Kari Beatty, Patrick Bosold, Sasha Kisa. I'd like to put those names forward as commission members representing the City of Fairfield for sustainability.
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Hallie to approve.
Second.
Second by Flournoy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I think one thing might be important to say at this juncture, because we just handled one of these this week, and it's the first one really since I've been here that we have handled in about a year and a half, year and three-quarter. A solar array was put up by a homeowner. Right now, the way we're treating this, because of the way our code is written, we are treating these as accessory structures. That is literally what we're looking at right now. We don't really have a very robust WEX section, meaning wireless communication devices section, which a lot of times you might put solar in a WEX section, together. I think that's something we need to look at. Even though we're not to the point where we're rewriting zoning code, easily we could pull these things in when we do, but I think we really need to look at that. Perhaps that committee could assist the city in examining the different aspects of this, and the planning commission. If we could get that commission to come to the planning commission one night or two and look at a code, I think we really ought to do that. We're going to be forlorn if we don't, because there's going to be some impacts of these things, and basically the reflective nature of them. Maybe there's some things we probably need to attend to. And right now, an accessory structure in the city can be no taller than the main structure, which is going to be 30 feet high for a home. And of course, our pole sign recently went to 30 feet as a maximum. But the location of these things can be a problem. This specific one we looked at this week was a corner lot as well, which creates its own problems, of course, because the side yard can be treated as a front in many cases. This one we were able to get okay, work it out okay. As it turned out, the rear of the lot was an alley per se. We thought it was an alley for years. The city had been maintaining it, and it was found to be not a city alley. So unfortunately, because of the solar array situation, everybody's going to have to move their own snow from now on. But we got lucky there, basically, in the siding of it. But that won't be the case every time, and we really need something to attend to it. So maybe the utility subcommittee, I would say, looking at that, maybe. I mean, it is related to utility. The planning commission, just try to get a lot of people involved in that. Maybe if the chairman could come to those planning commission meetings, perhaps. And
I'll take it on.
I know he's bored and needs more meetings.
No, this guy's got enough. Give it to the environment committee.
The environmental committee, perhaps.
We've got a light agenda.
He's giving it away.
I'm on that too.
You're not sure.
Maybe both. Maybe a representative of both committees can attend.
Right.
But that would be something I think would be good.
Thank you.
Council also wanted to report that on April 8th, there'll be a public hearing for the Department of Transportation Commission, the DOT Commission, State Commission. And at these public hearings, they basically are listening to proposals from around their district. Or actually, from around this district. They do this all over the state. And we wanted to make a presentation on the South Main Street proposal to potentially go to a 3-lane from Fillmore as far as we can go, and talk with them about utilizing funds that they may have designated right now for overlay and repair, and putting those towards a bigger project that would expand the highway. But this is an opportunity for us to talk to the commission directly would like to put together a group with a presentation booklet on a project like this. I did speak with Regional DOT representative who is organizing the tour for the commissioners, and he said that they're going to be doing a tour of the area on April 7th, so he will bring them through that area so that they will be familiar with the discussion. But I think that our transportation committee, along with our engineering partners, could help us put something together and make representation at that hearing, which will be coming up fairly soon. Wanted to mention that I'll be attending our first presentation to the CAT board on Wednesday. This will be a very brief presentation to go give them an overview of our project, the application that we submitted in January. Not sure that there'll be a whole lot of questions at that point in time. There'll be another meeting at the end of April where we probably will dig into the project a little bit, but we will be making that presentation on Wednesday. That is all I had. Is there any other business for the council? Not entertain a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Hamilton. Second. Before we adjourn, I want to remind everyone that we do have a special council meeting at 6:30 on Wednesday. Tony, are you able to make that?
No.
You're not able to make that.
No.
Michael, you are. Martha is.
Yes.
You are.
Yes.
Okay. And I know Jessica is going to be out of town too, so we will have 4. Okay. Do you have a few minutes after? So, all those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.